All right, don't worry, this is not a sports story. This is a proposal story, and don't worry because it has a happy end. In case you get worried along the way, it's going to be fine. So it starts in spring in Washington, D.C., and at the time I had been dating my girlfriend for only about a year and a half, but I was already convinced that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. And I was ready to propose. And the way I figured it, the proposal was going to be a surprise and was going to end with a yes. And that was the way I just figured all proposals really should go. They should end with a yes, and they should be a surprise. Surprise proposals were definitely the best kind, for lots of reasons, one of which is that it helps you avoid the dreaded relationship talk, which is the talk that starts with, we have to talk about our relationship. Relationship talk, if you're dating someone for long enough, you're going to have, almost guaranteed you're going to have a relationship talk, and many, possibly many of them, if the relationship is going well. In that case, you're almost eventually, inevitably going to have talks that devolve into detailed negotiation and planning for how the proposal is going to go. You're going to be planning joint trips to the jewelry store to pick out the ring. And eventually you're going to end up arguing over what the names of your future children are going to be called. And this is all before anyone even gets around to saying, will you marry me? So I wasn't in favor of that. And the other reason that relationship talks are to be avoided is that they often sort of devolve into conversations about emotions and feelings and hopes and fears for the future. There's also something I wasn't really a very big fan of, but it was just because of my sort of very wholesome and repressed Midwestern upbringing, or for some other reason, but I wasn't in favor of that either. And I really, I did, it was going to be fine with me if I could sort of skate all the way through this relationship up to the proposal without really having a single sort of legitimate relationship talk. And I actually thought I had a pretty good chance of succeeding in this case because, like I said, we'd only been dating for about a year and a half, but things were going really well, and I was pretty sure Allison was as sort of relaxed and confident about the relationship. And so at that point I started thinking of a plan that would lead to a surprise proposal, probably about roughly the end of the year.
So at this point I was starting to panic. John and I had a great relationship, but we had been dating for about a year and a half, and we had never discussed anything remotely related to the future. I had no idea how he felt about the idea of marriage, if he might perhaps want to marry me someday. I didn't know how he felt about kids or pets or anything. So at this point, I'm starting to freak out a little bit. I'm 30 years old, and my biological clock is starting to tick. And I also have this sort of theory about adult relationships. I feel like they kind of have a sell-by date. If you're dating someone and things are going all right, but if they don't advance after a certain period, things can kind of start to stink. And I did not want that to happen to John and me. So I decided I would give it to the end of the year to see how things were going. But if we didn't see where this thing was going, I was going to have to take matters into my own hands and propose myself.
So I'm not really much of a planner, but I figured the first step was to get a ring. My parents had been holding on to my grandmother's engagement ring for just such a situation. The downside of this, though, was that I was going to have to fly back to Wisconsin and have a version of the relationship talk with my parents if I wanted to end up with the ring. The good thing, of course, is that we all grew, I grew up as their children, so as their child, they were not also excited about having serious emotional relationship type conversations. So I was able to kind of, mumble my way through that entire conversation, end up on the other side with the ring without really having to make a lot of eye contact or discuss how I really felt about Allison. So that was the easy part. The hard part then, is I had this ring, but I didn't know if it was going to fit Allison. So I couldn't very well go and ask her what her ring size was, because that would probably tip her off to what the end game here was. So instead I developed this plan that developed slowly over the summer, where every time we held hands, I would kind of try to play with her knuckles and try to see if I could get a sense of what the ring size would be. It didn't work at all. I mean, it was a horrible idea. I didn't have a chance. So I just had to hope the ring would fit eventually. But I did waste a lot of time on this. I didn't worry about that though, because I figured I had plenty of time to play with.
So that summer, John's roommate graduated from law school and announced that he was going to be moving out of the apartment and moving up to Baltimore. And I was sad I was going to miss Matt, but I was also excited because I thought, all right, this is a great opportunity for me. John's living alone, his roommate's moving out. Here's a great opportunity for me to move right in and we could take our relationship to the next level. So, unfortunately, John had different thoughts. He started asking his friends if he happened to know anyone who might want to move into his apartment with him. Now, I was aware of this and sort of disappointed, and none of his friends volunteered. And then he started asking his friends if they knew of any other friends that might potentially want to move into this apartment. And nobody stepped up, and this went on for weeks, which it was surprising to me because he had this great apartment. And I was ready. So eventually he asked me, he said, Allison, do you know anyone who might want to move into this apartment with me? And I said, yes, I do know someone who might like to live with you. I would like to live with you. What do you think about that? And then there was this very awkward silence that followed. It was a long silence. And John kind of ended that silence by mumbling something about him not being ready to take that step. And I said to myself, I said, not ready? We've been dating for 1.5 years now. When's this guy going to be ready? So I knew we had to have this talk. It was time to have this relationship talk. But we were about to take a 2-week trip to the Midwest together, and I thought, all right, I'm going to hold off until after the trip, and we can have this talk after.
So step 1 had been to get the ring, and step 2 was definitely not to move in together, because that would really sort of undermine the eventual surprise of the proposal. So I had to set that aside for the time being and figure out step 2, as far as I could figure out, was to get her father's permission, to get his blessing to marry her. So the first step on our little Midwestern road trip was at her folks' place in Chicago. And almost right off the bat, her dad invited me to go take their 2 dogs for a walk. This was perfect. It was gonna, we were gonna be alone together, and I would have a chance to ask for Allison's hand. But if I was having problems opening up about my relationship to my own parents, it really should have occurred to me before this that there was no way that I was going to be able to have this intense relationship talk with Allison's father. To sort of give you a sense of the dynamic, I mean, I was never, even years later, comfortable what to call him, whether it should be Bill or Mr. Stevens or Dad. So there were literally years and years would go by where we would have conversations and I would not call him by his name or any version of his name. This sounds maybe a little bit ridiculous, but it's actually not that difficult to do, except in situations where he has his back to me and I was trying to get his attention, and that would sort of turn into kind of a hey you situation that would be a little bit trickier. But so it's not surprisingly, we got back to the house. I had not been able to ask him for his permission to ask Allison to marry me, and all I really had to show for the situation was sort of 2 fully loaded poop bags, and a sort of growing suspicion that if I had not been able to check off step 2 in this plan, that the way things I had imagined would unfold might not go exactly the way I thought they should.
So after our couple days in Chicago, John and I headed up to Madison, Wisconsin for a couple of days to spend some time with his parents. And after that, we went up to Canada for a little while, and then to Mackinac Island, where John's parents had honeymooned back in the 70s. And we had a lovely time, and as we were wrapping up that part of the trip, John said, all right, before we go back to Wisconsin, I have a surprise for you. And I'm not big on surprises, but I was intrigued here. I thought, all right, if he's planned something, this could be good. And I'm wondering, has he booked a reservation at some B&B in Door County? Or are we going to some fancy restaurant on the shores of Lake Michigan? I'm wondering if John is going to ask me to marry him. So I have these thoughts kind of swirling in my head as we're driving down the highway. And we're going down, and John takes the exit for Green Bay, Wisconsin. And that throws me off a little bit because I don't associate Green Bay with romance, but I'm like, I'll go with it. All right, what are we doing here? So we're going down the streets, and we turn into a parking lot. I realize this is where the surprise is. We're in a giant parking lot. I realize we're in the stadium of the Packers, the Green Bay Packers. We're at Lambeau Field, and John says, "Surprise! We're taking a tour of the Packers Hall of Fame." And there's no anything remotely related to us or our future or anything. So this is not what I was expecting. But I put my good game face on. I'm like, all right, we're gonna do this. We're gonna go take the tour. We did the Lambeau Leap. We had a good time. Went back to Wisconsin after that and flew back to DC. And when we got there, we were in John's apartment, and I said, "John, we need to talk about our relationship."
So that was a surprise. And quite frankly, I found it to be, a little unfair to sort of spring the relationship talk on me from sort of completely out of the blue. Considering I hadn't even got to step two of this plan, the proposal plan, I was really stuck. I had no idea how to navigate my way out of this situation. And so I was frozen. I literally sat there with my head in my hand, just hoping that Allison would change the subject if I remained. So she didn't. And then the awkward silence continued for so long that even I couldn't take it any longer, and I finally realized what I needed to do. So I looked up, I took a deep breath, and I looked right in her eyes, and I said, "Allison, don't you think you're going to be late for your yoga class?"
Yoga? No, it's true. I like yoga, and I had talked about taking a yoga class that weekend. But I didn't have a yoga class that morning, and even if I did, I would have happily skipped it to have this conversation. So, needless to say, I was quite upset. I was confused as well, because here John and I had this great relationship, but he never wanted to talk about the future, and I finally posed this question to him directly, and all he could say was, "Don't you have to be somewhere else?" So I'm thinking, maybe he doesn't want to talk about the future because maybe he doesn't want to have a future with me. Maybe the relationship talk that he doesn't want to have is actually a breakup talk. So I'm all upset. I leave the apartment kind of in a huff. And as I'm leaving, I hear John say, "Wait, I'm sorry. Can we talk about this later? Can we talk about it tomorrow?" And I said, "Fine," and I stormed off.
So as she was walking away from the apartment, I thought to myself, that could have gone worse. It bought me a little bit of time, but I knew what I had to do. I had to skip all the way to the last step, which was the proposal. I only had about 24 hours to make all the arrangements, but I thought, at least I hadn't necessarily lost all the element of surprise, so there was still some.
So the next day, I had calmed down a little bit, and I met John in Georgetown, and we had a nice picnic. We didn't talk about anything, but we had anything serious, and we had a nice time. And then John we were walking through Georgetown, and John kind of led us to this garden where we had gone on our first date. And I'm confused. I'm like, when are we going to have this serious talk? Where is this going to happen? So there's a bench that we kind of come across, and John sits down and kind of motions for me to sit down. And we sit down, and I look over at John, I see this vein in his neck. It's throbbing. I can see it. It's like so big, and that's kind of what I'm focusing on. I'm like, I've never seen anything like this before. And I said, John, are you okay? Your vein is throbbing. And then he didn't answer. He got down on one knee and he pulled out this ring and he said, Allison, and he poured out his emotions. He did do that, and then he asked me if I would marry him, and I gave him an enthusiastic yes. So after all of that, John actually wound up getting what he was after. He managed to deliver a surprise proposal. He never had to have that dreaded relationship talk. And he got a yes. Now, I wish I could say John learned a lesson from all of this, but he didn't. A little while into the engagement period, we're starting to have conversations about the future and plans and things like finances and things like that. And I raised the topic of children. I wanted to know what he thought about that idea. And he indicated that he might one day support the idea of possibly having children. But he said he did not want to talk about that, and he suggested that we have a moratorium on the subject for 1 year after we got married. So in other words, we would not be discussing the subject of children for at least a year and a half. And I grudgingly agreed to this because we were fiancés, but I will say I too learned a lesson, and that moratorium did not hold. We ended up having a very productive conversation, and we had our first child before our second anniversary. Thank you.
And he's a Packers fan.